All right. Good morning once again. Um, so far so good. We have come to the last data analysis tool for this program, all the way from advanced Excel to Python and Power BI. So probably towards the end of this class, I will look at the assignments, the projects. I just want us to take the lecture first. Probably the last 30 minutes, I will use it to assess that. So general introduction to SQL. General introduction to SQL. So how do we define SQL? Let's start by knowing the full meaning of SQL. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language is a programming language used for managing and manipulating data stored in a relational database management system. Is a programming language used for managing and manipulating data stored in relational database management system, RODBMS. So actually, SQL is a language of database. So once we hear the word database, SQL is very much involved. It's a language that helps us to create and manage database. Now, as data analysts, how does it relate to us? Why are we learning it as one of our tools for analyzing data? How is it going to assist us? Now, we all know that most data today resides in the cloud, right? Most data today reside in the cloud. Then you will have to ask yourself which mechanism or which technology will be used to store those data on the cloud. That is what? SQL, database. So database will be created and then the information will be stored in it. Now, another advantage of learning SQL in this program is that it gives you an opportunity to analyze web-based data. For example, you know that we are expected to know different sources, right? Where we can actually get data from. And one of them is what? Websites. Most data are derived from websites. Now, supposing a company hires you and they do not trust you enough to give you the login detail to go to their website and take the data into your system, draw your insight, and submit your report. If they mandate you to analyze the data directly from their website, you may not be able to do that if you don't understand what? SQL. Are you getting it? You will only be lucky if they have given you the opportunity to export the data so that you can choose Power BI, so that you can choose Advanced Excel, or even choose what? Python. But if such opportunity is not given to you, in other words, you will not be able to do that job because you don't know how to speak SQL as a programming language. So there are a lot of advantages that are attached to the application of SQL in data analytics. I hope I'm making sense. So I'm trying to cite some reasons why having learned Excel, Power BI, and Python, we are still what? Learning what? SQL. They all have their own strengths, okay? So once it comes to analyzing data that are stored in a website, you need this language to be able to what? To analyze it. Now, if you are good at using Python for data analysis, it's as good as you have already learned what? 50 to 60% of what? SQL, because the code syntax are almost what? The same thing. So that is why we are not going to spend much time. And apart from that, the SQL does not visualize with graph. It does not visualize with graph. It's just normal metric analysis, table analysis. So if you are considering visualization, then you have to consider what? Either Advanced Excel or Python or what? Power BI. Now that we understand what it is, now let's look at what is the SQL itself. So SQL is a standard what? Language for access. Yes, is another definition I'm giving us. So SQL is a standard language for accessing, managing, and modifying data in a relational database. So it's as if this definition is the same thing with the previous one. But what I did in the previous one is that I was able to tell us the full meaning of what? SQL before giving us the definition. All right, now let's look at the basic concepts, the basic SQL concept. So in other words, for you to be able to communicate this language effectively, you need to be familiar with some terms. Okay, so each time these terms are used, you should know what they represent. That is why I tag them as what? Basic what? SQL concept. So the first one is what? Database. Because you will often hear me using these terms. That is why I just want us to understand what they represent. So database simply means a collection of related data. A collection of related what? Data. So I still want to break it down to a layman way. Now, let me use my annotation to break it down for you. What we are saying is that from the word data, there are two words that are put together. Database, database. We have already know that what? Data are raw fact or information in this context, right? Now, base means where they are stored. Okay? So when you now join them together, database, it means data storage, Sikena, right? Or a container that holds what? Data. So that is the reason why learning this language is very, very important to us as data analysts, because this is more or less of the language of the data. And since data are stored in different storages, then we need to understand how to relate with them. So database is the collection of what? Related what? Data. Now, why did I use the word related? It means that this is the global sign of what? Data storage, where data are stored, just like this one that you are seeing. Now, this is another one. I'm just trying to give us the pictorial expression of what I'm saying. So the whole of this is the what? The data what? Base, for example. Now, this could be represented as a table. And the table has attributes or columns and what? Rows, which represent the records. Now, here can be what? Students ID, for example. This is customers. Okay, let's say what? Name. This is gender. Let's say sex. Now, this can also generate another what? Table. All of them, they are in what? They are in one database, right? Good. So I'm going to break it down now. So when I said database is the collection of what? Related what? Data, it means that it's like one container that holds different tables with different records that are related. Okay, so which means that you can create one database and what? Add different what? Record inside. That is the meaning of that word. Related what? Data. So a database is not meant to store only one set of what? Information. It can store different what? Information. Now, let's look at this now. I'm still leaving this diagram. Tables. What are tables? It's a collection of what? Related what? Data within what? Database. The collection of related. The collection of related data within a database is known as what? Tables or table. Now, you can see with my diagram, so this is a table. This is what? One table. Because table holds the record. Notes. Tables holds the record in database. So you need to understand that we cannot actually store the record directly in the what? The database. Records are to be stored in a database through what? An element called what? Table. Okay? So you cannot create database and put record inside. Right. After good, that file cabinet is database. Then those ones that you are bringing out, they are the tables. The tables are the one holding the what? The record. And the records are arranged in the table in a horizontal and vertical what? Structure. So that is why we say that a table is a two-dimensional model for holding data. You can note it down as additional definition. A table is a two-dimensional structure used for holding records in vertical and horizontal manner. In vertical and horizontal manner. Am I communicating? So we are still looking at the basic SQL concept. Now let's talk about the columns. Let's talk about the columns. So I'm still leaving this diagram for proper explanation. Columns are what? Individual elements within what? Table. So, sir, this student ID is what? A column, right? This is what? Another column. This is what? Another column. This is another column. Now, what we are describing as column professionally can be described as attributes. Okay? They are called what? Attributes. So column also means what? Attributes. Now, why do we describe columns as attributes? Because we are saying that attribute provide information about an element or an entity. Am I communicating? An attribute provide what? More information about an entity. Now, that is why you would type this student's ID is an attribute that is describing the kind of value that will be coming here, right? So here, name, this is another attribute that is describing another set of what? Value that will be coming here. So that is why professionally, we prefer using attribute instead of using what? Column. Because when we use column, we are only trying to speak the layman language so that they will know that, okay, the vertical. But if we really want to talk about the function, we use what? Attribute, because attribute is what actually what gives us what? The description of the type of record or data each of the column will be receiving or are receiving. Am I communicating? So now let's look at the relationship. From database, you get what? Table. From table, you get record, right? From database, you get what? Table. Table is defined with what? Column and what? Row structure, right? And then in the column and the row, that is where you have the record. Now, let's look at the row. The rows are the individual entity. Let me clean this. The rows are the individual entities.
The rows are the what? The individual entities. The individual entities, entries within a table. The rows are individual entries within what? A table. Then note, the rows are used for holding records. The rows are used for holding records. So that is the function of the rows as far as the table structure is concerned. While the column is the one that defines what the head is or the attribute. So the collection of this attribute and the record forms what? A table what? Structure. Are you with me? Now, there is another basic term we need to understand about SQL, which is called what? Queries. So there is nobody that uses this language that do not understand what queries are. Is another common term I am going to be using. So each time I use the word query, what do I mean? Query means what? To request. If I want to query you now, sir, if I'm asking you, how much do you sell today? I am requesting, right? That means what? I'm querying you. But it's just that sometimes we see it as somebody is attacking you. When boss and probably employees are interacting and the boss is asking for, please, what happened today? The boss is querying, is requesting. So in SQL, whenever the word query is used, it means what? You are taxing the program to do something. And this is where it's related to us as data analysts. If not for the ability to write query statements, SQL wouldn't have been recommended for us as what? Data what? Analysts. Because we are going to be querying the data. That is the analysis. We are going to be writing query statement code that says, okay, from this entire data, display only record equals to what? Edo State. That means what? I have written a query statement that SQL will use to fetch me certain what? Information where I am going to observe and get what? My insight. So for us to say that we can use SQL to analyze data, it then means that we know how to write SQL what? Query statements. Exactly. So let's write it. Query means what? Request for what? Specific data or action. That is a simple way of describing query. Request for specific data or action. So now, the next thing we are going to do now, we are going to leave here. We are coming back to this. This is practical. So by the time I'm going to teach this, we will be what? Applying them. So now that you have a background of what it is, let's go to what? SQL installation. Right, SQL installation. Right. Yes. SQL installation. Now, SQL is a server-side programming language. SQL is a server-side programming language. Are you with me? SQL is what? A server-side what? Programming language. That is, it can only run on a server. That is, it can only run on a server. That is, it can only run on a server. Am I communicating? Now, what is a server machine? Or what is a server? What is server we're talking about? Now, from the word server, that is what? Is the one that is servicing, the one that is funding, okay? The one that is funding, the one that is giving, that is giving, how do I put it, instruction to the framework you are using to analyze your data. You see, when we install Excel, we did not install server. when we install Python, we did not also install what? Server. But the only server we installed, indirectly we installed server. The server we installed was an Anaconda. Okay? Now, what we are saying is that anytime you want to use SQL, whether for website backend or for data analysis, you have to start by installing what? A server. Now that you know that what? It is a server-side what? Programming language. Any language that is described as server-side, it means that before you install it, you need to install. Yes, side. You must install what? A server. That's the reason why you downloaded what? MySQL server. That's the reason why you downloaded what? MySQL server. Because you acknowledge that the SQL framework, which is for data analysis, can only be installed on what? A server. So a server is just like the package that runs what? The framework. You can run it down. You can write it down. In this context now, the SQL server, the MySQL server is like the package that runs the SQL workbench, which is the framework for data analysis, which is the framework for data analysis. Are we together? So at the end of this training, somebody can ask you, since you claim you can actually analyze data with what? SQL, which server do you use? See, SQL is on its own. So when we downloaded MySQL, is a type of what? Server that empowers what? SQL. SQL is a language on its own. But we are using the version called what? Mine. Because when SQL started, it wasn't SQL, it was SQL. It was SQL. That's why when you are watching most of this Oyibo picture, Oyibo video, instead of using MySQL, we use what? SQL. SQL. Because it was initially called SQL before it was sold to Micron. So Micron is a lady that purchased what? The SQL when it was called what? SQL. Now, just to know her own version, that is why she dropped cron and add what? Mine. So whenever you hear MySQL, it's just a way of identifying someone's what? Version that you are using. We have SQL Server, is another person's version. We have MySQL Studio Management, is Microsoft version. So when you say MySQL is another person's version, okay? Now, one good thing about SQL is that the way you speak it on any of these versions, that is how you speak it across. The only thing is that the syntax, there are some syntax that will work in one person's version that will not work in another person's what? Version. That is why when you are running a particular SQL query statement, let's avoid distraction. When you are running a particular SQL query statement with a particular version and is not executing, what you should do is that you research on its corresponding syntax based on the version you are using. So it might not be working not because you are not writing the right code, but probably what? That particular version does not support what? The syntax in that format. So you have to search that this code I'm trying to write, what is the syntax of it on this version? That is the only difference since you are going to what? Experience. But I can tell you that what? 80 to 90% of the SQL statement runs across what? Different type. It's just few of them that what? That will be different. And like I just advised you now, you can just add little research to know if you are running that particular one that is not running based on the version you are using. So now we know that SQL is a server side. That is the reason why we have to install what? A server. And I said the server that is required for us to install Workbench, because the idea is that we want to install what? Workbench. So that will now take us to, now let me just run through the steps. So you just open a browser and type, just type download what? MySQL server. MySQL server. So once you type it, then you can now click on what? This, MySQL database. Let's see, that is not the one I'm looking for. So my spelling is not correct. My SQL Server, good. So you get it from this. Now we have the community version, and then we have the pro version. The community version is the free version, the open source. So if you are going for the pro version, there's every tendency that you may be asked to pay for you to use some of the advanced feature. So you click on the community version, and then once you click on it, it will take you to bring you here. Now you navigate to go to download page, and then you select the one that have MSI. The reason why we are coming to this is that we don't want to download, we don't want to install the server and then start downloading the Workbench. So this one comes with both the server and the Workbench. So, one is heavier. Yes, one is heavier. Yes, it depends on the after all, we are going to customize. So any of them will actually offer us what we need. It depends on the purpose you are installing it for. Okay, it's not only data analysts that will install it. Another field can also install it. So they are to analyze which of these actually contain what they want. But from experience, this one contain everything we need. So there's no point of going for this. So I will just select download. I have already installed mine, but I just want us to understand the process. Now you now click on no, thanks. If you want to have an account with them, you register. If you already have one, you log in. If you don't have, you sign up. The benefit of this is that if there is any subsequent updates, you'll be receiving it via your email. That is the benefit of signing up with them before you proceed to downloading the copy. So now I can just select no, thanks. Just start my download. So you will notice that it has downloaded. So the next step is for us to install it. So let's quickly look at that. But before that, let's look at my SQL Workbench, right? Because now we know what is my SQL Server. My SQL Workbench, I just want us to understand the role of this. My SQL Workbench. My SQL Workbench. Workbench. My SQL Workbench. So my SQL Workbench is a free. My SQL Workbench is a free, open source. My SQL Workbench is a free, open source, graphical user interface, GUI. Graphical user interface, GUI. 2, for designing, developing, and administering my SQL database. Let me take it again. My SQL Workbench is a free, open source, graphical user interface, GUI. 2, for designing, developing, and administering my SQL database. So you can see that the definition has explained it all. So if I want to administer, that is I want to emulate SQL, then in this field of data analytics, I need to install Workbench. Now, why I decided to give us the definition of both of them, because the installation we are going to go through now, we capture both of them, so that when we get to Workbench, you should know why we are installing it. So it's going to give us like a development interface where we are going to be writing and executing our query statement for analyzing data. It's just like your notebook. So this is representing your notebook. You install Anaconda before you launch Jupyter Notebook. So that Jupyter Notebook was your development environment. So the same thing here now. Excel, the worksheet was the environment. Okay. Now let's quickly go through the installation step, right? Step by step on how to install the server and the Workbench. Step by step on how to install the server and the Workbench. Step by step on how to install the server and the workbench. So step number 1, go to your download folder. Go to your download folder. So I expected us to know what download folder is. So let's quickly go there. Go to your download folder so you can see mine. Once you open your download folder, if you have downloaded successfully, go to download folder. Please, let's be doing it together. Make sure that you are not too fast. Go to what? Download what? Folder. Okay? Go to download folder. Now, this is the software you downloaded. So double click on it. That's your next step. Double click on it to start the installation file or process. Double click on it to start the installation file or process. Are you with me? Yes, yes. So, I told her that I've already installed my own. So at some point, our interface will be different. So what do you have there? Yeah, click on yes. That is Windows security permission. Just click on it. Okay, you have to come and sit there. Let me be seeing what you are doing. So I will use your own to guide us because I've already installed mine. Server what?
Server only. Client.
So we have 3 options. Sorry, 4 options. Okay, so the first one is what? Server only.
Client only.
Now, where you have server only, look at the sub item mentioned there, whether workbench is there.
No, it's not only.
No, bring it. There is a box that is listing out what.
SQL, my SQL server. This type should be used when you want to deploy a MySQL server, but will not be developed.
You have to bring your system. You have to bring your system here too, also. So like I want to because I don't want to uninstall mine because of start encountering challenges. Yes. All right, so okay, so you have to be following us. Any option we are choosing will also be communicating it for you. So we have server only. It's not only the what? The MySQL server. We have what? Full what? So you can see that when you click on full, you see what? MySQL workbench mentioned, right?
Yes.
So that is the option we are selecting, please. So that we don't have to start installing server and then come back and start installing what? Workbench. Oh yeah, you are the one clicking, I'm only communicating. Good. Now, I hope you have clicked. Make sure you are not faster than us. Have you clicked now? Good. Now, the moment you select that option that says what? Full installation, right? And you click on next, you now have the list of programs you are installing. So you take your time and they are all saying that what? They are ready for installation or downloading. So make sure that you are on the internet while you are on this interface. So we have my SQL server, which is going to download. We have what? Workbench, which is going to download. We have the shell, which will also be downloaded, the router, and then documentation, and then sample and what? So there are some data, global data like COVID-19 data that will be downloaded alongside. That is what that last option is specifying, sample. So once we are done with this installation, automatically we'll have that data set and one other data set already. Now, let's click on execute so that you can start downloading them. Click on execute. Make sure you are also noting down your step. Execute and observe what is happening. So you give it time. Click on next. Then execute. So to start installation, you also give it time. We watch and make sure that all the software installations are complete.